Evening News with Frank Reynolds.
Evening. Once again, the Soviet Union, demonstrating a colossal contempt for the opinion of mankind, has resorted to brute force to keep a satellite nation under control. Russian tanks and infantry, aided by troops from East Germany, Hungary, Poland, and Bulgaria, have occupied Czechoslovakia and have crushed the new and relatively liberal leadership of that small country. The Czech news agency said tonight that Alexander Dubček, head of the Communist Party in Czechoslovakia, and other leaders of the reform movement have been taken to an unknown place by Soviet forces. Dubček reportedly was removed in an armored car. The secretary of the party's Central Committee, according to the same news agency, has been kidnapped. The Czech parliament has unanimously demanded the release of the country's leaders and the immediate withdrawal of all the foreign troops, but the Soviet leaders obviously are not in a mood to pay any attention to demands from Prague. These films show various scenes in Prague today. Czechoslovak television was still in operation, and the films are relayed to the United States via satellite. The young people of Prague sitting down in the path of Soviet tanks, borrowing a technique employed elsewhere in protest demonstrations. The smoke here may well be from burning trucks or streetcars that in some instances were used as temporary barricades. But almost everywhere the people of Prague turned today, they found themselves looking at the barrels of Soviet guns. At least 70 tanks were reported in the capital city of Prague, and it was in Prague that casualties were heaviest. Soviet gunfire reportedly killed 4 persons in the capital. Nearly 200 were wounded. 2 more deaths occurred in Bratislava, and at least 1 in Košice. The Czech leadership called on the people not to resist violently, but these pictures make it plain that though the citizens of Czechoslovakia are unarmed, they have expressed their contempt for the invaders of their country. American embassy officials in Prague have advised Americans in Czechoslovakia to remain where they are and not attempt to travel. Soviet planes continually flew over Prague. The city's airport was closed to all but military traffic, and throughout the city, bands of people roamed about, many displaying Czech flags. Here is a crowd gathered around an automobile that reportedly was rammed by a Soviet tank. There were many incidents of Czechs and Russians trading insults, and one report says the Russian soldiers were told they were going to Czechoslovakia to liberate the country from the West Germans. Prague radio announcers, broadcasting descriptions of the scene and the streets below them, said at one point that bullets were smashing through their windows, and over their voices the sound of cannon and machine gun fire could be heard. In a choking voice, one announcer reported, "This is the last appeal. Shooting is heard from the streets outside. They are trying to scare us away, but we are used to it." And throughout the city, too, the crowds gathered. There were spontaneous rallies held. Again, smoke, possibly from a burning truck or building. But everywhere there was the overwhelming presence of the Soviet military. Just to look out a window in Prague today was to see Soviet armor and trucks moving the infantry that took up positions around the city. This is Prague, and here armored cars move into position and stop. Nobody knows when or whether they will move again. Radio Pilsen described itself today as the last free radio station in Czechoslovakia, and the announcer at the station, which is some 50 miles southwest of Prague, said a tank of unknown nationality was advancing on the radio station building. He said he did not know how long the station would be able to continue broadcasting, and a short time later, Radio Pilsen went off the air. In a moment, a report from an ABC correspondent on the Czech frontier.
Marine deck stain, bait, coffee, sweat, tomato sauce. Guess which stain Ajax 2 won't get out. Ajax 2, the detergent so strong you can use half the bleach you usually use. Now, which stain? If you guessed the marine deck stain, you were right. Ajax 2 won't get that out. But we're working on it.
Margie, that's the ugliest tube I ever saw.
Relax. We're doing the ugly tube test.
Oh? How's the test work?
Disguise the new tube of Colgate and any other leading brand. After 10 days, which one really looks used?
Colgate. Give kids a choice. Most kids brush with Colgate, anti-cavity Colgate.
Compared to the leading fluoride, Colgate's unsurpassed in reducing new cavities.
Make the ugly tube test in your home with anti-cavity Colgate. That's beautiful.
West German police now say that watchtowers along the German-Czech frontier are being manned by soldiers wearing different uniforms, apparently Czech and Polish and Russian. And machine guns are pointed to the east, away from West German territory, toward Czechoslovakia. Travelers near a West German border checkpoint report seeing Russian and Polish troops, tanks, and anti-aircraft guns. ABC's Russell Jones, who was in Vienna when the invasion began, hurried to the Czech border across from Bratislava. Ironically, it was in Bratislava that the Russian and Czech leaders appeared to iron out their ideological differences in the conference that ended just 19 days ago. Here is Russ Jones' report via satellite.
That seemed to be lifting from Eastern Europe has crashed down again, crushing the budding democracy in Czechoslovakia. Here at Heinberg, across the Danube from Bratislava, only foreigners are crossing over into Austria. The Czechs and the Slovaks are held captive by the Soviets who have attacked their country. On this side, crowds of Austrians wait for word of what is happening. A Swedish tourist gives his account of events in the Slovak capital. Did you see Soviet troops there?
Yes, I see a lot of troops there.
Soviet, not Hungarian.
No, only Soviet troops.
Did you see any resistance on the part of the Czech and Slovak people?
And, no, I just heard some shootings.
The Czechs were shooting at the Soviets?
Only one I saw. He was staying in a window or on the roof, I don't know. But he killed one of the Russians.
One of the Russians was killed?
I guess he was killed, I don't know.
What did the other Russians do?
Oh, they started shooting machine guns.
Are there any other demonstrations there in
Yes,
Bratislava?
there's a lot of demonstrations, even now.
What form? What are they doing?
Oh, they are saying, go home, rats, and they say, dog check. I don't know what they say.
Bratislava Television broadcast what it said were thousands of messages and telegrams from workers' groups, all proclaiming loyalty to the regime of Alexander Dubček. And it said, too, that Czech writers, journalists, and artists were ordering a 2-minute general work stoppage starting at noon today to demonstrate their loyalty to the government and, in the words of Bratislava Radio, to show the world our people's faith and confidence in the Dubček regime. Ostrava Radio quoted Czech military commanders as being 100% loyal to Dubček and awaiting any orders from him to take action. He is not, of course, in a position to give any orders now because he's been taken away to an undisclosed place by the Soviet authorities. ABC News will broadcast a special program about the Czech situation called Again Czechoslovakia, and the program will be seen on many of these stations tonight at 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central Time. In a moment, the White House reaction to the Czech crisis.
Wonder what television will be like this fall? Here's some shows we think you'll enjoy. The Mod Squad.
They can get into 1,000 places if we can.
If you meet these kids in an alley some night, don't fight them. They're cops.
I know I'm not beautiful, but I'm told I have a nice personality.
She's the ugliest girl in town. She's a boy.
I mean, is that the put on to end all put on?
ABC's very unconventional coverage of both the presidential race and the Summer Olympics. That's just part of a great new schedule recommended this fall on ABC.
This crystal is clear. Clear Floorworks is crystal clear on your floors. Clear goes on clear, dries clear, stays clear, and it never yellows. Lets all the natural beauty of your floors show through brilliantly. Clear, the crystal clear look from Johnson Wax.
There's no reason why this little boy should be bothered by mosquitoes. Not with Off around. Off is the mosquito repellent that really works. And here's proof. Watch those hungry mosquitoes go for this unprotected arm. Now, foam type Off is applied. And look, they don't bite, they don't even light, thanks to the most effective repellent ingredient ever developed. It keeps mosquitoes away up to 5 full hours. Try Off in foam or spray.
An emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council is expected to get underway soon to deal or try to deal with the crisis in Czechoslovakia. The meeting was requested by the United States and 5 other countries. Earlier today, UN Secretary General Font denounced the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia as a blow to world order. President Johnson promptly denounced the invasion of Czechoslovakia and appealed to the invaders to withdraw.
The tragic news from Czechoslovakia shocks the conscience of the world. The Soviet Union and its allies have invaded a defenseless country to stamp out a resurgence of ordinary human freedom. It is a sad commentary on the communist mind that a sign of liberty in Czechoslovakia is deemed a fundamental threat to the security of the Soviet system. The excuses offered by the Soviet Union are patently contrived. The Czechoslovakia government did not request its allies to intervene in its internal affairs, and no external aggression threatened Czechoslovakia. The action of the Warsaw Pact allies is in flat violation of the United Nations Charter. We are consulting urgently with others to consider what steps should be undertaken in the United Nations. Ambassador George Ball has been instructed to join with other nations in the Security Council to insist upon the charter rights of Czechoslovakia and its people. Meanwhile, in the name of mankind's hope for peace, I call on the Soviet Union and its associates to withdraw their troops from Czechoslovakia. I hope that responsible spokesmen for governments and people throughout the world will support this appeal. It is never too late for reason to prevail.
Just what role Washington is likely to play in Czechoslovakia's future has been explored by ABC's Joseph C. Harsh in Washington. Here is his view.
American policy towards the Czech crisis was shaped up rather quickly here in Washington today. The results of a series of emergency sessions at the White House and State Department can be summarized as follows. The United States is going to let the small countries take the lead in anything that is done, mostly to be in the United Nations. Washington will support everything they do, but the American role in the scenario, as written here today, is to be quiet and secondary. There will be nothing dramatic in the area of American-Russian relations. Proposals for putting those relations into a deep freeze have been turned down. For example, talks are to continue as scheduled on nuclear weapons limitations and other pending American-Russian business. There is a considerable hope here that almost universal world disapproval of what the Russians done may cause the Russians to reconsider. State Department officials have noted hopefully that the Czech National Assembly has denied the Russian case for the invasion. It is noted that the Czech foreign minister was last reported to be in Yugoslavia, which means that protests at the UN might include a protest by officials of the Czech government itself, and that many communist countries and communist parties are among those who are protesting. The assumption here is that anything Washington might do all by itself dramatically could only make it harder for the Russians to back down. The hope is that if Washington plays a secondary, quiet role, that the united voices of the small countries of the world just might impress the Russian bear. Joseph C. Harsh in Washington.
Nicolae Ceausescu, the reform-minded leader of Romania, said in Bucharest today that a guard of workers, intellectuals, and peasants will be formed for protection of our country. He obviously is concerned that the Russians might get some ideas and moving against him. Ceausescu declared that his trust in the strength of the people, adding that the grave mistake in Czechoslovakia may jeopardize peace in Europe and the future of socialism. President Tito of Yugoslavia, who has openly backed the liberal Czech leaders, expressed his deep concern over the invasion. He said the sovereignty of a socialist country has been violated and the social and progressive forces in the world given a hard blow. In a moment, Senator Edward Kennedy speaks out on national issues.
Hut three! Hut, hut!
Okay, guys, here's the play. Buy one, get two free. Huh?
Buy one, get two free.
You know, the Bic School Special. You buy one Bic for 49 cents, you get two 19-cent Bics free. You save 38 cents. Huh? Oh, come on. You pay 49 cents for this Bic Fine Point, you get these two 19-cent Bics free.
Free. Get it? Got it. Two 19-cent Bic pens free. I save 38 cents.
Right, let's go.
Get the Bic School Special right away. Available only on this card.
Bic writes first time, every time.
Attention businessmen. Ask your local office supply dealer about this Bic Pen Office Special and save money.
Senator Edward Kennedy today delivered his first public speech since the assassination of his brother Robert Kennedy. The senator spoke at the Worcester, Massachusetts Chamber of Commerce. He called the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia an affront to decency. Then the senator noted that many people believe that as the only surviving brother of the Kennedy family, he should retire from public life.
For the last 10 weeks, I have not been active in public life. I have concerned myself with my family. I have spent much time by the sea, clearing my mind and my spirit of the events of last June. Some of you have suggested that for safety's sake and for my family's sake, I retire from public life. To those who have so written, my deep thanks for your kindness and for your concern. But there is no safety in hiding, not for me, nor for any of us here today, and not for our children who will inherit the world we make for them. For all of us, the only path is to work in whatever way we can to end the violence and end the hatred and the division that threatens us all. So today I resume my public responsibilities to the people of Massachusetts. Like my three brothers before me, I pick up a fallen standard, sustained by their memory of our priceless years together. I shall try to carry forward that special commitment to justice, to excellence, to courage that distinguish their lives.
Most of Senator Kennedy's speech today was devoted to Vietnam. He called for an immediate end to the bombing of North Vietnam, a mutual withdrawal of foreign troops from the South, and a reduction in both American military activity and troop levels this year. Kennedy also insisted that the government of South Vietnam must not be allowed to stand in the way of a settlement.
The only way, I fear, that we can cause the Saigon government to broaden its base, increase its appeal, and negotiate an accommodation with the National Liberation Front is to make it clear our intention to withdraw from the South as Hanoi withdraws, and our complete unwillingness thereafter to bear the burden of their responsibilities and pick up the pieces of their failures. The government in Saigon must not be given a veto over our course in Paris, our cessation of the bombing, or our mutual withdrawal of troops. They must be given clear notice. They must be given clear notice that their chief prop will be taken away as soon as we can conclude such negotiations with Hanoi. In short, they, as we, will have to negotiate with their adversaries without a military victory. They, too, will have to make concessions. They, too, will have to work for peace.
In Paris, U.S. and North Vietnamese negotiators met today for almost 3.5 hours in their 18th session. There were no indications of progress. Ambassador Averell Harriman denounced North Vietnam for refusing to show any restraint in response to the American limitation of the bombing, but the chief North Vietnamese delegate again insisted that the United States halt all bombing, and he blamed Washington for the lack of progress in the peace talks. For an analysis of the immediate political effect of Senator Kennedy's speech today, we go now to Chicago and ABC's political editor, Bill Lawrence.
Senator Kennedy's speech had a tremendous immediate emotional impact on many Democratic convention delegates. As he broke his political silence, Teddy Kennedy seemed to have three major targets: the Vietnamese war blunders of retiring President Johnson, Vice President Humphrey, Johnson's ally and the probable nominee of this convention, and not least of all, the Republican presidential nominee Richard Nixon, who shares their views on maintaining military pressures on the North Vietnamese. The Kennedy Declaration was a mighty booster shot in the arm for Democratic doves. But even before he spoke, events abroad in the form of naked Soviet aggression against Czechoslovakia already had outrun Senator Kennedy's arguments. Few now will think that you can negotiate honorably with the Soviet Union or any of its friends. Certainly the Czechs could not. It seems to observers here that Vice President Humphrey already has the convention votes to win the nomination with or without the support of the Kennedys. But the Massachusetts senator might be in a better position to bargain if he were here and if he were willing to negotiate for second place. But Kennedy said today that he would run for no office this year, and thus he ruled out the slim hopes of some of his friends that he still might be drafted for president or vice president by this convention. This is Bill Lawrence in Chicago.
More on presidential politics in a moment.
Beautiful, Mr. Bartlett, beautiful. You were the wife.
Well, there was this big red truck, and he...
Red? Wasn't going to a fire, I hope.
No, I was parked, and he backed into me.
Yeah, well, we'll fix it up here. It isn't too bad.
Wish I could say the same thing for these new cigarettes of mine.
More problems?
They taste as hot as the ones I was smoking before.
Yeah, these won't.
Cools?
Mm-hmm. Tastes just like their name.
Come up to the cool taste. Taste extra coolness every time you smoke.
Yeah, right, Charlie.
Hey, Eddie, you know you've got something.
Huh?
These Cools. Sure like them.
Come up to the cool taste.
Cool is the only cigarette with a taste of extra coolness. White filter. Rich tobaccos, too. That's cool.
In Chicago today, the Democratic Credentials Committee turned down preliminary challenges of the regular delegations from 4 southern states, Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, and Texas. This was considered a setback for Senator Eugene McCarthy, who had hoped to pick up votes among the challenger delegations. Last night, in an action without precedent, the Credentials Committee rejected Mississippi's regular delegation and voted to seat an integrated Mississippi delegation. In Washington, the Democratic Platform Committee turned to the issue of crime in the streets today. Attorney General Ramsey Clark said some people who call for law and order actually are trying to block progress toward civil rights. They cry order, Clark said, but they flush at the mention of justice. Georgia's Governor, Lester Maddox, who is now a candidate for the presidential nomination, urged the committee to include a plank pledging to make the streets of America safe. Richard Nixon carried his drive for Republican Party unity into New York City today and met for 80 minutes with Governor Nelson Rockefeller. A joint statement issued afterward said Rockefeller will campaign throughout the country for the ticket of Nixon and Agnew. ABC's David Snell points out that Rockefeller did not go before the television cameras to pledge the enthusiastic support promised earlier in the week by Michigan's Governor Romney and Ohio's Governor Rhodes. Vice President Humphrey notified the 3 television networks today that he and Senator McCarthy will not be able to debate on Friday as tentatively scheduled. Mr. Humphrey gave as his reasons the sensitive international situation, the entrance of Senator McGovern and Georgia's Governor Maddox into the presidential race, and McGovern's request to the Federal Communications Commission for equal time. For the first time in 2 months, enemy gunners have shelled Saigon. About 15 rounds of what were believed to be heavy rockets fell inside Saigon, and 1 round hit the National Assembly building in the very center of the city. No report as yet on casualties. U.S. infantrymen today killed at least 182 Viet Cong who attacked an American armored column near the Cambodian border. 1 American was killed and 23 others were wounded in the attack about 60 miles northwest of Saigon. Farther north, just below the demilitarized zone, North Vietnamese troops shot down 9 American helicopters. U.S. casualties were described as light, however. Nearby, American soldiers killed 52 North Vietnamese troops. And in the Mekong Delta, 9 other U.S. helicopters were damaged on the ground during a wave of attacks on Allied positions. Doctors at the Walter Reed Army Medical Center say in tonight's bulletin, the latest one, that General Eisenhower spent a comfortable day. The bulletin says there has been no recurrence of rhythm disturbance in the general's heartbeat, that his morale is excellent and his vital signs continue to be stable.
Now you can clean your rug this afternoon and entertain guests tonight. Glory does it. Glory, the new spray foam rug cleaner from Johnson Wax.
Just push the button and you get instant foam. It's deep cleaning foam like professionals use. Now sponge it in with a wet mop, let dry, then vacuum. Glory usually dries in only 2 to 4 hours. And just 1 can cleans a big 10 by 14 rug for less than $2.
Try new Glory. So easy you can clean your rug this afternoon. Entertain guests tonight. Glory, new from Johnson Wax.
We can think of no better way to end this program tonight than with the concluding words of Senator Edward Kennedy's speech today.
So let us resolve that all the sacrifices, from our earliest forebears to the young men in the jungles of Vietnam, to the presidential candidate who also gave his life, let us take from the meaning of their lives a new courage, a new conviction, a new resolve, that all this shall not have been in vain, and that in our firm and unswerving determination, we can yet serve the end that he so tenderly sought for all of us, to tame the savageness of man and make gentle the life of the world.
That's tonight's news and comment. I'm Frank Reynolds. Good night.
Monday through Friday, in color, the ABC Evening News with Frank Reynolds. This has been a presentation of ABC News.